Can you tell the difference between these two shots?
Hi, kamusta?
One of them feels better than the other. Can you tell why?
I'm emotion.
Hey guys, it's Irie. Let's figure out why one of them feels good and appealing and the other one feels a little bit off. Let's talk about what makes an appealing mouth shape. What are the things to avoid and what are the common mistakes of animators and juniors alike? And let's go over a few tips to remember. Lip sync is going to be another topic of its own. This one is going to be focusing mostly on mouth shapes. Okay, so why does it matter? Well, the mouth does not just cover a small part of the face, but it actually encompasses quite a big part of our facial animation. All of these things are connected to what we do with the brows and the eyes. So, animating the mouth isn't just reciting words or shaping an expression. In its own, the mouth is an actor that is also part of telling a story. So every part of the face plays a role in this. Each section is basically connected to each other. So you cannot have really nice and appealing brows and eyes and leave out the lower part of the face. So just an example, in the previous video, we talked about how the eyes and the brows are connected and how to have and achieve an appealing shape in this area of the face. Notice how all of these ones are playing a big role into being connected. And how do we apply that on the lower part of the face? To begin with, when you shape the mouth, think about these lines. If you want to push the mouth slightly higher over on the screen right side, what happens on this part of the nostril and this part of the cheek? Does that region get affected? What happens to the cheek area? Does that get pulled into the mouth movement? And what happens in this part of the nostril? Does that also get moved down? Think about all of those different parts as if they're like webs on the face, and any small movement is like pulling a string on the web. And the closer you are to the source of that pulling, the more influence that it has on those little strings. And the farther and farther away you are from that point from the web, the less and less influence it has. But there's so much of that pushing and pulling that can happen on the face, and that adds a lot of appeal. Okay, so how do we get an appealing mouth shape? Let's look at this example over here. So we've got a character that is smiling towards camera. Now, this is the expression, and then look at the difference between this and that one. Let's look at it a little bit closer. Here is an example of a character smiling, not minding the top part of the face. If we are just focused on the lower part of the face, we can see that the character is smiling. Now, let's have a look at the full expression. Let's compare this to an adjustment like this one. Let me show you both sides at the same time. So, what can you tell between these two? How are they different? Can you tell which one is appealing and which one isn't? And can you tell what makes it appealing and why the other one isn't quite hitting the mark? All right, so if you've had a look at these two comparisons and if you were able to tell the difference between the two mouth shapes and you guessed asymmetry, that's right. Asymmetry is everywhere. We can see that with the shape language of the mouth and how one corner does not mirror the other side. You can see that one side of the mouth is higher than the other. There is also the issue of the teeth that is showing, how much is being shown. There's molars. And some of the adjustments that were made in here where it's a little bit more cleaned up. All of them are contributing to how something can be made asymmetrical and add more appeal. So again, if we look at this one and I just zero out everything on this characters, let me show you the issues that can arise if you are moving the mouth corners together, pulling them open, and then you open the mouth and move the jaw a little bit, instantly you have perfect symmetry. Everything is mirrored from one side to the other. If you are shaping your mouths this way, you are instantly creating something that is very mechanical and very robotic. The real mouths would never move the same amount on both sides. One of them will constantly have a little bit of adjustment, maybe a little bit higher than the other side. So that's one of the first steps to break the symmetry. Here's a demonstration of a mouth movement and how a peel is able to be added. Can you tell which part of the mouth starts to move first? And how does the other parts of the mouth start to follow through? And can you see the little bits of asymmetry that we've got in here? When I start to first open my mouth, where does that start to happen? So from that video, let's do a really quick analysis. When I start to part my lips, this is the area that first started to have motion on it, whereas the rest of the mouth are still pretty close. This is called lip stickiness or lip zip, where you start to pry open small little areas while keeping the other ones closed. And this is how you get a leading motion in your mouth. So trying to have some of those as part of your animation and part of your posing. When you're opening the jaw, not the whole part of the mouth opens. You have different segments that leads the motion and leading the action. And as I scrub through this, you can see that the rest of the mouth starts to pry open. Another way of building a peel into our mouth posing is the jaw and facial involvement. When moving the mouth, the jaw is basically the engine of the mouth. Try it out and try moving your mouth and feel all of the small movements that the jaw is doing. And it's not just the jaw. When we are smiling or frowning, the cheeks and the nose are also involved. So let's say this is our starting position. Let me just zero out everything in here and reset the mouth. From here, when we open the jaw and when we close the jaw, and in this rig, this is actually built in. If I zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that there is some movement that is already happening in the nose as part of the jaw movement. So sometimes you can get basically a bit of a freebie and automation, but this is one really good example of that, of facial involvement. So let's try making the character smile. When we smile, and when we move the mouth corners up, I can pull it all the way out like this, but if I don't involve a little bit of the nostril, it doesn't feel as organic and it's not going to feel as involved or appealing. Let's use this as an example. Here's the starting point. Look at how wide my nose is, how wide my mouth is overall, and where it is positioned on the face. And as I start moving, I'm going to go into a smile. Look at the stretch that it does on the side of my nose and how it pulls the jaw upward and how it pulls the cheek as well. So let's do a really cool comparison in here. So this is the original starting point. Let's put a marker on the side of my mouth right here. And let's put a marker on the side of my nose right there. And if I go to my second pose, which is the smiling one, see how much difference that did to our starting position. Our nose, the side of the nostril used to be right here. And with a little bit of a side smile, the side of the nose went all the way up in here. Our mouth also not just went up, but also stretched to the side. So again, looking at these comparisons is very interesting to see the trajectory of where the movements go. And again, it's not just this part of our face. There's so many small nuances that contribute to a symmetry to add appeal. It's not just the screen left side of the face, but look at what this one did. Just gonna put That's where the marker is from our starting point. We got also, very interestingly, a little bit of movement on the screen right side of the nose. This is the midpoint of our nose, and with a little bit of movement, that actually also stretched a little bit to go over here. So you notice all of these small little things, and you can apply this to your expression and your poses, not just to get a symmetry, but to really grasp that appeal. And understanding and doing these kind of reference analysis is what's going to make your animation different. So, what are some of the common things to avoid when shaping the mouth and creating expressions? The first thing is to avoid a static mouth position. So basically, try to avoid keeping the mouth in the same line. Remember your starting point and make sure that the mouth doesn't always end up in that same place. You can actually grab the entirety of the mouth and then move it up or down depending on the shape, depending on the phoneme you're trying to hit. And having this organic movement is what's going to make your facial expression and your facial animation feel very fleshy. Again, every section of the face is an organic system with a constant pulling and pushing motion. This idea is very important to understand for you to successfully apply appealing shapes throughout your animation and throughout your shot. The best way to understand how the web design that I was explaining to you guys on how every part of the face feels like a web, and any small movement is going to feel like you're pulling a small string of that web, and all of the surrounding parts in it gets influenced and affected by that movement. The easiest way to see and understand this is to see your pose and your animation in wireframe mode. If you start moving small areas around, try to notice what does that do in all of these areas of the mouth. Are they moving? What kind of rig? Again, depending on the rig, if you have a free rig, sometimes it's really quite difficult to achieve appeal. You have to work really hard to put that back in. Some rigs have a lot more automation when it comes to the mouth, but you can see that as I am moving, all of these little areas on the mouth, easily identifiable through that wireframe mode, is being influenced by just this jaw movement. Let's say we start pulling the mouth corners to the side. You can see very, very easily and very clearly in here how the surrounding area also gets pulled out. But have a look at this part of the nostril. You see that it is not really moving when I am moving the mouth, but we just looked at that example of my face that when I'm moving the corner of my mouth into a smile, that these things gets pulled into that movement. Now, the second thing to avoid is and look out for is the teeth position. The teeth is often and very easily overlooked when we're making mouth shapes because we're so focused on the surface of the face and we're so focused on shaping lips that oftentimes that we tend to forget what is happening inside the mouth. Let's look at an example of this pose when the teeth is not posed like this one versus this one. Are you able to tell how the teeth is adding appeal to the character? Can you see the difference on how the teeth is posed? And can you tell why it's not appealing? The other thing is, have a look at how the teeth is in relation to the lips. Can you see how adjusting the teeth is adding to how the pose becomes just more natural and just more aesthetic to look at as well? There are two parts to consider when adjusting the teeth. The first is the position of the teeth showing, and the second is the amount of teeth showing. So let's unpack this one. If I start to pose my mouth and I get into something like this. I want to go into a smile. Let's use this one as an example. So if I don't change the teeth position in here, it's going to look a little bit awkward. The appeal comes from connecting the teeth line to the flow of the lips. But how do we address this then? So in addition to trying to not show as much of the lower teeth, I'm just going to move this one slightly higher. Now, the second part in here is how much teeth are we actually showing? Let's show a little bit more of that lower teeth. So let's say we've got like just a big open mouth shape. Like this one already looks a little bit awkward and unappealing. Having too much teeth showing can give that effect unless that is what you're going for. And again, depending on the style, that may be fine. But if you want to have that really nice appealing shape, you want to then address that awkwardness by either favoring either the upper or the lower part of the teeth. You can pick which one. You never want to show the same amount of upper teeth and the same amount of lower teeth on any of your mouth poses. Even for something like this, it feels very stretched and awkward to show that much. So you can decide show just the upper teeth or maybe show just a little bit of that lower teeth. That may be possible. Typically, you want to just favor showing just the one side. Also, then having it flow along with your lip shape. So doing these kind of adjustments and help the appeal that you can get from your mouth poses. Here are a few tips to remember. Number one is always use a reference. It's always going to be there. If you do not have a reference, it's very, very obvious to me. I see a lot of students go through this. They start posing without a reference. You can make a shot out of it, but the difference is very stark when you have a reference versus not. Try and always record yourself to analyze a lot of these things that we talked about. You don't have to copy your reference one to one, but you need to be able to translate it into your animation. The mouth itself is its own character. So much like the eyes and the brows, every part of the body, if you look at it and zoom into just this area, this part, any part of the face itself, like whether it be the mouth or the eyes or the brows, every part is an actor within its own section. So over here, the mouth itself will have like its own silhouette. It will have its own antic and overlap. It will have its own leading motion and have its own offsets. And so the last thing is practice appeal. Whenever anything is symmetrical, you know that's going to get you something that is very robotic. So try to remove as much of the symmetry that you have from the starting point of the character. Never select both of the edges of your mouth, move it open for a smile, and then call that a day. This is instantly something that is very symmetrical. Make sure to then connect the different parts of the face to your mouth, involve the nostrils, involve the movements of the cheeks, move the jaw around, and see if that supports your camera angle. So practice a lot of those things to get you into a really good place when trying to get appealing mouth shapes. Solid mouth shapes is going to lead you to having a way better facial animation. So if this video helped you, hit like and subscribe, and let me know what other topics you want to hear about. This is Irie, and thanks for watching.